Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode we're going to revisit the bonnet bulge on the Alfarrari. Okay, so as you might have just seen, I thought it was about time to up my game on my intros, etc. Thanks again to Gab for that. I'm really happy with how that's come out. Makes the whole content look a lot more professional than it probably is. But moving on, as you might have seen last week, I modified my Ferrari intake plenum again to try and get it to fit into this car a bit better. I'll put a link up above so you can catch up with what I was doing there. And think about subscribing if you haven't. It really does help us out. So last week I thought I tried to cover off a lot of the repeated comments, but obviously I did miss a few of them that always come up every time I talk about this. First one, a lot of people were talking about is it possible to turn this plenum around 180 degrees? I already have. Originally these bits were sticking out this way. In the Ferrari, this engine sits in this orientation. The gearbox is behind. It's a mid-mount engine, and the air filters and everything are off the back of the engine. And this picks up and turns around 180 degrees. But there is no room at the back to run any inlets. It's fine on Ryan Turek's GT4586, where that's a race car. Doesn't have to worry about windscreen wipers or heaters or any of that sort of stuff. My heater box is right here, right behind this. There's all the wiper motors and everything that I still want to keep. This is going to be a road car, a driven car, so it needs to have windscreen wipers and stuff like that. So there is no room to turn this around and have it facing this way. Trust me, I thought about it long and hard and would have done it that way if I could. Another one of the things is, can I block off? I could have actually blocked off these inlets here and put the throttle bodies coming out the side, possibly. That is something that I possibly could have done. One of the things I'm resisting doing that is, well, I have to try and make the whole front of this nice and pretty, which is all possible to sort of make it match. But Ferrari spent a lot of time making sure that the inlet of the air going into these plenums gets even distribution amongst all of the cylinders, so you get this nice even run. If you make custom plenums, you can hope that you're getting even distribution amongst each cylinder, but you really don't know. Ferrari have done that for me, so I don't want to mess around with it. And to be honest, I think by doing this I can get the bonnet bulge a lot better than what it was before. I just was not happy with it, as you know, so it's time to get into it. And I think the first thing to do is to get out the grinding wheel and start cutting, and then we can have a look at what we're going to do moving forward. All right, so I've cut this bit now off of the front, and we can see what we're working with. I'll just take you onto the side profile now and show you what I'm dealing with and where my thought process is lying. So we can see here that this is such a better profile. It's already much better, but it's still not good enough. I don't like how sharp this point is here. So I think I might be able to curve that off a bit more and just taper it in. It's still going to be a bulge, but I want to make it as subtle as possible to sort of suit the lines of the car as much as we can. It's going to be there, but let's make it a little bit more palatable. Okay, so as you can see, I've cut and trimmed. This originally had square corners. I didn't like the square corners, so I've curved it all out. So I've got like sort of a nice sort of outline for my Perspex panel. I'm still going to keep the Perspex panel. I like the idea of that, but I want it to blend in better. And when I go back here, that body line is much, much better. I can definitely live with that kind of bonnet bulge. Like there's going to be a bonnet bulge. There just is. But that is much, much more subtle. And now I think it's time to mock it up in cardboard. So just to see what it looks like before I make my final decision. All right, so that to some of you may not look like much of a difference, but to me looks like a huge difference in the shape. I mean, the cardboard's got some ripples in it, so it doesn't quite represent how it's going to be. Obviously, the metal will be much flatter, but that is a much, much, much more acceptable bonnet bulge. I can live with that. It's only reasonably subtle. That's what I was sort of picturing when I first did it. Now, I'm thinking also that I may actually keep a slight crease in this corner, sort of replicating this sort of creases here. So I just want to go through some of the bulge options that people have mentioned in the past that just won't work properly. Some people don't like the fact that it gets wider at the front than it is at the back, but that is just the shape of the side of this. If I tried to make it wide at the back, it wouldn't really work. It would be a really flat panel here, and it would come in flat and then sort of have to twist, and it would be almost vertical if I made it narrow at the front. Like it doesn't work with the shape of the bulge that I need to make. I like this shape. I actually got the first idea from a render I'll put up here that uses a similar type of bulge, but obviously it's smaller with individual throttle bodies coming off of obviously a V6 in the engine bay, and it's much more subtle. Obviously this is a bigger bulge because I've got a bigger engine in here basically, but I can live with that. So now we have my cardboard template. It is time to start mocking it up in steel and getting it onto the car and getting everything flat. That is going to be the challenge. All right, so I drew out my rough shape for the panel I want, but the issue is that a flat panel on the car is really not going to be a good look. And yes, I can curve it in one direction relatively easily, but no panels on cars are generally curved in one direction. They generally have a compound curve, meaning they curve one way and the other way, so they've got a bulge in it. And one of the main ways when you can do that by hand shaping it is using an English wheel, which is something I do not have in the workshop. But I did see a trick on Casey Putch's video channel, and I thought it was quite interesting, and I'm going to give it a try. Basically what he did is to get the shape in it, to get a compound curve in it. It doesn't sound like it should work, but apparently it looks like it does, is if I use my rollers. I have this 3-in-1 machine, which is generally, it's pretty terrible at all three things it does, but it's better than nothing, and I have it here. And if you roll the panel through one way and then turn it 90 degrees and then roll it through the other, it actually seems to give a compound curve to the piece. I believe my thought is because these rollers, particularly these cheaper rollers, have more pressure on the ends than they do in the middle. So I think it's it's stretching the metal on the sides all the way around, because by going both directions more than it stretches in the middle, so you end up getting this sort of stretched edges. So the stretched edges need to go somewhere, and that's what gives it this compound curve. So I've never done this. I'm going to give it a try and just see how it goes. Fingers crossed it turns out well, but we'll soon find out. All right, well, that actually has compound curves. I think the shine, you might be able to pick that up in the camera. It's not, it's in the middle, it's not a heap. It doesn't seem like it's stretched it out a lot, but particularly on the corners, it's definitely rolling over, and you can see that it's actually a, it's actually a compound curve, not the neatest or squarest, but better than I can do without an English wheel. So let's now try to start trimming this out and start getting it close to fitting the car. All right, but before we go too much further, I want to repair this section here. I did sort of weld it up and sort of fix up some of the holes before, but it's all pitted and it's really too far gone. So I'm going to cut that out and replace that whole section before I go on and stick the rest of the bonnet back together. All right, so that patch is all done. There's a couple of pinholes I need to attack when I start welding the rest of it on, but that is looking good now. A bit of just a patch and some panel beating, and it looking pretty nice. So now let's fill that big hole. All right, that is really coming along. I am really happy with how this is looking. I really took my time and I've cut and re-welded these sides a few times, trying to make sure there's no stress dents anywhere. They've got a nice even curve. They're nice and even on both sides, nice and flat around here. This front lip is not quite right at the moment. I still need to trim it. I just keep sort of cutting the tacks and just re-tack welding it until it's just perfect and get every panel just right. And I just went over it with a ruler to see how well the compound curves work, and I don't know how well the camera's picking it up here, but there's gaps under there and under there, that way, and gaps. This is the compound curve worked really well. That actually has just the right shape to match in what was there. I was really worried about having just a flat panel, just a curve that way. It really needs to have that compound curve in it to really match, and that works. I am really happy with that method, and it's nice and even over the whole thing, which is a big plus. Even with an English wheel, I can imagine running it backwards and forwards. You have to be really careful to keep it even through the whole thing. Whereas this is, this is great. I'm quite happy. So I've got to trim this edge off, trim off these tacks, get the bonnet just right, and then weld it up. Hopefully get it all nice and neat and even. But that is looking so much better. Oh, much happier. All right, that was a whole lot of work trying to get this front lip of the bonnet nice and smooth and even and get the angle reasonably good. It's still not perfect, but it's getting pretty close. So, that's a lot of work. But now I actually have the shape all in my bonnet piece and it's all looking nice. So I might go through, I'm just going to knock the top off of some of these nasty welds and then start potentially going around and just welding it in solid. And I will make note that at this stage it is so important to get every lip just right. As you're going through and welding, keep tacking and adjusting and make sure that the levels are perfectly even, because if they're out just a little bit, you're going to get lumps and gaps and stuff everywhere. It's worth taking the time now. It'll save you heaps down the other end. So that's what I'm doing, taking it slowly, and we'll get there. All right, so you saw me then, I went around and just spreading the heat out, tacking the pieces together. So just to tack, spacing them all out, work them all the way around and then go back and go next, instead of doing it all in one line, because then obviously it's going to warp like crazy, and I've ground it back and it's kept its shape nice and neatly. It's all feeling really good. All right, well, this is really looking the business. I am very happy with how this is turning out. This front lip, it's a little bit wobbly, and getting it just right is not the, it's not the nicest, but it's the best I can do with this very old, very thin sheet here. But the last thing I need to do is go through and finish up these edges here. So as you can see, I've got a couple of sort of triangular bits that I've missed that I've still got to make a little patch for. And I just want to get this level all just right. So that's my next challenge, is to just do this last little bit of feathering and we should be good. Wow, I'm so much happier. It's exactly what I pictured. I would go as far as to say that I even think it looks good and it sort of works with the flares and the engine of the car and stuff like that. I mean, it's overboard. I mean, it's a Ferrari engine in an Alfa. But I think it finally works with the shape of the car. The curves work, the lines work. I think it's doing the job. Would it be better if I could fit the engine in its form underneath the bonnet? Probably, but I'm liking it now. I really didn't like it before, and I think you could see it showed, which is the reason why I never had the bonnet on it when it was sitting around, because I couldn't stand looking at it, and it was worrying me for so long. I am so happy with how this compound curve worked. I am amazed that just running it through the roller a few times would give it that beautiful, perfect amount of compound curve. And it all blends with the car nicely. It looks like a proper panel, not just an afterthought. So I'm in love. I am so much happier. But I think that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, 1954 and 1955 saw the heyday of the four-cylinder Ferrari with the 500 Mondial and the 750 Monza. As per Ferrari's model naming of the day, the number referred to the capacity of one cylinder. So the 500 Mondial had a 2-litre version of the Lampredi four-cylinder taken from the Formula 2 car and detuned to make 170 horsepower. It was named Mondial, meaning to affect the world, to celebrate Alberto Ascari's winning of the Sports Car World Championship. The 750 Monza ran the bigger 3-litre four-cylinder, making 254 horsepower. It was built on the same chassis as the 500 Mondial, but only weighed 40 kilos more, coming in at 760 kilos. Sadly, Alberto Ascari, who was arguably the best driver of his time, with 2 Formula 1 World Championships under his belt, was killed driving the 750 Monza during a test drive at the same track that the car was named for. He died at the same age, 36, and on the same day of the month as his father, who died 29 years earlier in the 1925 French Grand Prix. Alberto Ascari was known to be a very superstitious man.
Oh, I am so much happier with that with that bonnet bulge. It's been weighing on my mind for ages. I sort of kept thinking I'm going all this effort and the bulge is just going to be this big hideous shape on the front of the car. And I think that actually works with the flares and everything else. I think it all works. I am quite happy with the result, and it
looks a lot more elegant.
Yes.
But you were so excited when you did the first one. So what made you... Is it just looking at it and you realised it was ungainly?
I tried to convince myself that it was okay, but it was that it had to be that way. But I had to keep working on it until I could get it better, and that's something I can live with. I can live with that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the new intros as well.
Yes, let us know what you think. The new Mrs. Jeff, the new Home Built by Jeff, the whole new Jeff.
Yes.
We want to know what you guys think. If you like them, yeah, give us your feedback. Let us know.
Yep, and as always, get the merch. If it's worth doing twice, and that was definitely worth doing twice.
Why do you do it once if you could do it multiple times?
Yeah. Well, as my skill level increases and I keep looking at things that I didn't do probably as well as I should have, I might keep going back to get it right. I want to get it right. Anyway.
Yeah, well, the last 2% is what really counts sometimes.
That's it. So
please like and subscribe, and if you want to follow the videos a day early without ads, follow Jeff on Patreon.
Yep.
And we'll see you next time.
See you guys.
With the 500 Mondial and the 750 Monza. 3-litre four-cylinder engine built, making 250 horsepower, 254 horsepower. Let me try
It's